And there it is. There you have it, folks. So, as I said, I was going to re-shroud my Gen 2 mask that used to be a bib mask, and it's finally been done. And here is a little look at it. So I'm just going to show you what I did to achieve this. Let's get into it. Okay, so you guys remember I had a Gen 2 Ghostface mask that I bought back in, I think, probably 1998 or maybe late 97. It was probably late 97, but it is a Generation 2 mask. It has a couple marks on the mold that I've had a few people that know what they're talking about anyway in the collecting community tell me, you know, which is which and what to look for. But this particular Gen 2 I have was a bib mask, so it looked like this. So you notice it just sort of has the little, you know, the little cape underneath the chin that is hanging down there because it's supposed to work with the costume. So if you had a bib mask, it would have came from a full Ghostface costume. Back then, they had no full shroud. They just had the little bib underneath that you would tuck into the collar of the costume, you know, to make it work. So with this particular bib mask, what I wanted to do was, rather than mess with this Gen 1 I have here, you know, when you have something original like that, obviously you don't want to alter it or cut it or change anything on it because they're pretty valuable and they're hard to find these days. But anyway, the Gen 2 I have is so similar to that. It's a really nice mold. You know, it looks kind of like a Scream 2 mask. It's a great looking mask, and I figured it would work really well with my cosplay. So I thought, well, if I were to re-shroud it, I could stick on the Velcro piece that goes on the top, that's on the inside of the hood of the Scream robe. There is a piece of Velcro that sticks, and naturally I didn't want to put it on the Gen 1. I just, you know, of course they have the little streamer things hanging off the side that aren't screen accurate at all as well. So it does need to be altered to work with the cosplay. So my plan was to use the Gen 2 mask, re-shroud it with just a new shroud from, you know, like an ultra white mask, like, you know, or something like this. Like this is the current glow-in-the-dark version that they have out right now at Spirit Halloween. These shrouds are quite small though. I found this is really tight on my face compared to the older style. But what I did is I got an ultra white. This is an ultra white, and as you can see, I took the shroud off of this to use for this particular project. Because, like I said, my plan is to use it with the cosplay, so it's one where I'm going to have to cut these streamers off or figure out how I want it to sit and, you know, modify it. So obviously I don't want to do that to this one. So I figured this is the best solution for sure. So this is kind of how I went about it. So with my particular Ghostface mask, I had a small tear in the top of it. Now I don't know how this happened, but over the years when it was in, you know, my decorations box with all my other Halloween stuff, it somehow got squished or crushed or something like that, and unfortunately had this little tear on the top. So I wanted to repair that, of course, first, and again, it was another reason to go ahead and re-shroud it and use it for the cosplay, because it's such a nice mold, you know, based right off the Gen 1 mold as well. So what I did was I went out and got myself some vinyl specific glue. So the stuff I used is, I think it's made by LePage. It's a Canadian brand, but you could just use a 3M brand, or I think Loctite also makes a brand of vinyl glue. But what I did is I just cleaned off the area. As you can see, it's pretty torn here. I just cleaned off the area with some alcohol, and I waited half a minute or so for it to dry out. It dries real fast, and then just applied a little bit of the vinyl glue to either side and just tried to line it up as best I could. It turned out pretty decent. I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm glad it's kind of up high, sort of where the hood is always going to be covering it anyway, because it's never going to be far enough back where the head is just exposed. So I thought it would work great. So once the glue had dried, it was time to go ahead and put on the new shroud. So basically what I'm going to show you is how you can re-shroud your own, or if you're lucky enough to find one of these old style Scream masks, or like a nice Easter Unlimited version from, you know, probably 2010, 2012-ish, after Scream 4 came out. There are some cool ones there that would work well. Okay, so if you find a bib mask, or maybe you have a decent mask that's got a torn shroud or it's no good, what you can do is just pick up a typical ultra white, or, you know, like a glow in the dark, any of these typical Ghostface masks that has a shroud on it already, and just remove it. So what you're going to want to do is just pick one of these up. You turn it inside out. So you're going to go like this, so you can see where all the stitching is around the outside. So what you would do is you just take a seam ripper and you put it in one at a time basically, and just pull it out or cut it. I would try to just pull it out so it's not such a tedious job of tearing each one. The idea is to tear it and then just work it out of each stitch without doing any damage, because obviously you want to be really careful with these. You don't want to be too sloppy, so you take your time. It's really not as hard as it seems. I know some people are you know, a little reluctant to do stuff like this, but I mean, it is pretty simple. The only thing I would recommend is, if you are going to sew a nice mask, like something you really want to keep in great shape, or something that's kind of valuable, like my Gen 2 is a fairly hard mask to find, and they go for some decent money. So I chose a very small needle, just big enough where it's going to be obviously larger than the thread. And if I tie a knot in it, you know, it's going to stay, of course. But I used a small needle and just some standard black thread, you know, nothing fancy, and just carefully went around and re-sewed. So once you have all of that stitching off, you're going to be left with something that looks like this. And as you can see, there are the little holes. You can see on the front as well where everything was sewn on. So what you're going to want to do is take that new shroud and line it up like this. So once you have it inside out and lined up how you'd like it, you're going to clamp it down with something, whatever you have handy. Like in my case, of course, I used paper clips here, which is a little sad, but they actually held really well. You know, I used enough of them where nothing was going to move around on me, and I just was able to position them as I got close with the needle and thread. So you just sew all the way around the outside. If you have a sewing machine and you can rip through this, great. I mean, you're way better off. I have to do it by hand, of course. I would just recommend, again, using a small needle and just going slow and being careful, and using the existing holes if you have them. If you have a bib mask like I had, you're not going to have any holes at all on the entire top of the mask. Of course, it's only going to be on the chin. So the chin part will be easy to follow, and you're going to want to pretty much follow where the holes are. You don't want to overlap anything. So you just follow around as you go. As for the top, what I did was I just sort of lined it up as I went. I wanted to, again, use as much fabric as I could for the hood, so I put mine fairly close to the edge, not crazy close, but probably about, you know, 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and it turned out quite well, so I am happy with that. Like I said, if you want to display it, you're going to want to line your fabric up better, and you're going to see the sewn holes that are in this shroud, and you're going to want to try to hit the holes, or at least outside of the holes, so you're not going to see it exposed all the way around the jawline and the top of the head, etc. If you're using it for display purposes, like I said, just be extra careful to try to line up those holes as best you can. It didn't take that long, but again, just be patient and go slow. Try not to make any other punctures where You don't need to. I was just careful lining it up with each time I went in and out with the thread so that I didn't mess it up. And it wasn't leaving any terribly big holes or anything nasty. Like on this ultra white, you can really see the holes all the way around. Like it wasn't looking like that at all. Like this definitely looks very noticeable, but it wasn't looking like that with the old style. So once I was finally done with all the sewing, we were ready to turn it back right side out, and we were left with this. And I am pretty happy with the way it turned out. So as you can see, it's definitely not done yet. It's definitely not ready for cosplay. It still has these on it, but I wanted to put the shroud on the way it was supposed to look, just to have a few shots of it before I do alter it, because it is going to come back like this. Just like that, and I'm going to have to remove these, but I'm thinking I want the smooth front here. I don't want to cut it, so I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it yet, but that is the plan. And as you can see, the repair up here again, as I showed you before in the picture after it was repaired, it's still not very noticeable. And once you have the hood on, which is never going to be back here, it's always going to be at least a little forward, you're never going to see that. So I'm pretty happy with that, but I do still have to alter it. Like I said, I'm just pretty pleased with the way it turned out. I mean, if you can see it next to the Gen 1, it looks very similar. Just the way the hood is laying in this picture, it almost looks like the Gen 1 on the right has a wider forehead or something, but not at all. The molds look very, very similar. Yeah, I'm really happy with the way it turned out, so I think it's going to look fantastic. And of course, I'll have no problem at all putting that Velcro on top of this thing off of this ultra white. You know, it's just a shroud, so I can stick that on there. I can always put another one on. Then I do not have to touch my totally original Gen 1, and that can stay in its beautiful form it is. I can use that as well with cosplay. You can just tie these, you know, put it back and tie it. But I have a huge head, and it's pretty tough to do. So what I would have to do is probably use a safety pin and pin it, just to get it to hold up a little better. But using this one, it's going to be a piece of cake. So I'll just put this on and throw the hood on, Velcro it up, ready to rock. So I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, that is pretty much it for this quick little tutorial, if you will, of re-shrouding a Ghostface mask. This is going to work great for the cosplay, and probably next time you see it, it's going to be modified, and we'll get some shots of me in this wearing this particular mask for the 1996 cosplay. So very cool. Another thing about this mask that is different than the Gen 1 is the Gen 1 is a Fearsome Faces glow in the dark. It's an original. It's a poly hood. I know a lot of them were cotton, and some were poly though, and that is an example of one of them. This, of course, being a poly hood, these are the only ones I've seen around. I would like to put a cotton one on here. It would be even cooler, but I haven't been able to find any, that's for sure. But poly is totally fine, in my opinion, for this. And this mask is not a glow in the dark, which is cool. This one still smells like vanilla, but this one totally smells like vanilla. Like just going like this, I can still smell it. Like it's strong. This thing is beautiful how much it smells original and still totally like vanilla, like overwhelming. And I think it does look just a teeny bit more white than the other one because again, it doesn't have that glow in the dark aspect. So that is pretty much the differences between the two and what it is like re-shrouding ones. So don't be afraid. Again, take your time with it, do the best job you can. And again, if you're going to be displaying it, make sure you follow very closely on where those little holes are on the shroud, just to line everything up nicely. Or if you're using it underneath a big robe, it's not nearly as important in my opinion. You just want to get the shroud sewn on nice and straight and modify it so it fits you the most comfortable and looks good, and then, you know, with the robe on, you'll be killer, baby. So next video is going to be some pickups. I got a few things from Cavity Colors. Of course, that cool Ghostface shirt I was telling you about has arrived. Me being in Canada, you know, I know I'm good week and a half later than most folks that have theirs already. But beside the point, I'm going to show you it when I get it opened. I also have a couple of pickups from Fright Rags. I had to order 2 separate orders, like a couple days apart, unfortunately. So that was kind of an expensive bummer. But I do want to show you what I got there. I haven't taken them out yet either, so that is coming up in the next video, as well as some other interesting little pickups and some more news with the Calgary Expo that'll be coming up soon. Anyway, that is it for now, guys, so take care and thanks so much for watching.